The lights were hot. The studio air was heavy. And from the very first second Meghan Markle stepped onto the set of The View, you could feel it. The kind of tension that doesn't just sit in the room, it seeps into your skin, makes your chest tighten, makes you whisper to the person beside you, something's about to happen. She came in polished, composed, that cream-colored blazer draped across her shoulders, her smile bright but practiced. The Duchess of Sussex knew how to command a stage. But the audience wasn't fully buying it. Their applause was polite, but muted. And at that desk, four co-hosts sat waiting. One of them, Joy Behar, had a look in her eye that longtime viewers recognized instantly. That mischievous edge that meant trouble was brewing. Welcome back to The View. I'm Joy Behar, and we're here with Meghan Markle. The way she said it, sharp, edged, like a boxer tapping their gloves together before the first round. The cameras panned. Whoopi leaned back with that half-smile that always said she knew something no one else did. Sunny Hostin adjusted her pen in her fingers, her lawyer's poker face firmly in place. Sarah Haynes shifted in her chair like she could already feel the storm coming. Meghan crossed her legs with elegance, lifted her mug, and smiled. But if you watched closely, her hand was just a little too tight around the handle. A tiny crack in the armor. "Meghan, thank you for being here," Joy said, her tone dripping with a mixture of courtesy and challenge. "You're here to talk about your new children's book. But I think our viewers are a little more interested in some of the other projects you've been working on lately." The room shifted. The audience murmured, leaning forward, ready for what they knew would come. Meghan's training kicked in. She kept her smile. She leaned forward. "Well, Joy," she said evenly, "I'm excited to talk about anything that helps children develop empathy and understanding." But Joy pounced. She repeated the words back, empathy and understanding, drawing them out like smoke curling in the air. Then she delivered the first blow. "That's interesting," she said slowly, "because I've been wondering about the empathy and understanding you've shown your own family lately." The silence was instant. You could feel even the camera operators freeze. This wasn't just another celebrity interview anymore. This was a duel. Meghan faltered just for a second. The smile slipped, then returned. "Family relationships are complicated, Joy. And I've always believed in handling private matters privately." But Sunny Hostin smelled blood in the water. She leaned forward. "But Meghan, when you put your family business on international television, in interviews, in Netflix documentaries, can you really call it private anymore?" The audience reacted with gasps, murmurs, applause. This was what they had come for. Meghan straightened. Her voice grew sharper. "There's a difference between sharing your truth and exploiting family drama for entertainment." And there it was, the edge in her voice. The first flare of fire. Joy lit up like a predator spotting prey. "Your truth? That's a very California way of putting it, isn't it? But what about everyone else's truth? What about your father's truth? Your sister's truth?" The smile was gone now. Meghan's voice rose. "My father chose to work with the tabloids against me. That's not my truth. That's a fact." But Joy wasn't letting go. She leaned forward, voice sweet but lethal. "Don't you think maybe, just maybe, you played a role in how things went down?" The other hosts watched like spectators at a prize fight. Whoopi stayed silent. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear, and Sunny kept her eyes locked, waiting for the next opening. Meghan took a sip of coffee, her hand trembling just slightly. But the cameras caught it. The nation saw it. "Joy," she said, her tone shifting into control mode. "I came here to talk about children's literacy and empowerment, not to relitigate family drama the media has dissected to death." But Joy pounced again, harder. "But you can't separate the two, can you? You want to talk about empowering children, but what kind of example are you setting when you cut off your own family? When you make accusations on international television without giving them a chance to defend themselves?" The audience was split now, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Social media was already buzzing. Everyone knew this clip would go viral. Meghan's jaw tightened. "That's a very unfair characterization. My family had opportunities to defend themselves. They chose to work with tabloids instead of working with me." Sunny swooped in. Or maybe, Meghan, they felt they had no choice. Because you were already speaking publicly. When you told Oprah someone in the royal family made racist comments about your son, was that really keeping things private? The gloves were officially off. Meghan's eyes narrowed, her voice rising. Are you questioning whether I should have spoken up about racism directed at my child? I'm questioning the timing, Sunny shot back. The venue, and the lack of specificity that allowed people to draw their own conclusions and implicate innocent people. The crowd gasped again. Even Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Joy smelled her moment to escalate. And speaking of timing, she pressed, isn't it convenient these revelations came out right when you needed to rehabilitate your public image? Right when you needed to justify walking away from royal duties? Meghan snapped. Convenient? You think it was convenient for me to relive the most traumatic experiences of my life on international television? Convenient to have my mental health struggles dissected by millions of people? The tension in the room was electric. You could feel the entire studio holding its breath. What had begun as a routine book promo was turning into one of the most volatile live interviews in daytime TV history. And then Joy made it personal. Too personal. She leaned in, voice dripping with skepticism. Mental health struggles, she repeated slowly. You know what, Meghan? I've been in this business for decades. And I've seen a lot of people use mental health as a shield when they get called out for their behavior. Are we really supposed to believe that you, someone who worked in Hollywood, who handled that pressure, suddenly couldn't handle being a royal? The audience gasped. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Even the crew froze. Meghan's face went pale, then red, her fists clenching on the table. Her voice cracked with fury. Are you seriously questioning the validity of my mental health struggles? Are you suggesting I made up having suicidal thoughts? Joy didn't flinch. I'm suggesting you have a pattern of playing the victim whenever things don't go your way. First with your family, then with the royal family, and now, apparently, with anyone who dares to ask you tough questions. The studio erupted. Boos. Cheers. Chaos. The cameras zoomed in tight. This was no longer just an interview. This was a live televised battlefield. The studio was chaos. Gasps, murmurs, scattered applause, and boos rattled the air like thunder. The cameras caught every twitch, every bead of sweat, every flash of anger. This wasn't daytime television anymore. It was a battleground, and Meghan Markle stood at the center, her composure cracking for the world to see. Her fists were clenched on the table. Her eyes burned. Are you really going to sit there, she demanded, her voice trembling with rage, and suggest that I made up having suicidal thoughts? The question cut through the noise like a knife. For a moment, the room fell silent. No one dared breathe. But Joy Behar, her lips curled into the faintest smirk, didn't back down. She had her shot and she wasn't letting go. I'm suggesting, she said slowly, carefully, with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she was doing, that you've shown a pattern. With your family, with the royal family, and now with us. Every time the heat's on, you turn yourself into the victim. The audience exploded, half in cheers, half in outrage. Some stood, clapping and shouting. Others booed, their faces twisted in disgust. The divide was electric, splitting the studio in two. Meghan stood up, so abruptly her chair rolled backward and slammed against the stage. The sound reverberated. The moment was raw. I will not sit here, she shouted, her voice shaking, and be lectured about victim mentality by someone who has made a career out of attacking people on television. The audience roared. Cameras zoomed in, capturing her flushed face, her trembling hands. Joy shot back instantly, rising from her own chair, her voice just as sharp. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy? I'm asking the questions millions of people want answered, and you're acting like I'm the problem here? The words clashed like swords. For the first time, Sunny Hostin stepped fully into the fray, her prosecutor instincts cutting through. She raised her hand, leaning forward across the table. Meghan, sit down. Let's talk about this like adults. You came on this show knowing we ask hard questions. You can't expect us to just sit here and let you promote a book without addressing the elephant in the room. Meghan spun toward her, eyes flashing. The elephant in the room? You mean the fact that I married into a family that couldn't accept a biracial woman? That I was subjected to racist attacks from the press, while my husband's family stood by and did nothing? Sunny didn't flinch. No, she said coolly. I mean the reports from your former staff. The bullying allegations. The toxic work environment. You've painted yourself as the victim, Meghan. But what about the people who left your employment? Were they all lying too? The audience gasped. It was a body blow, and everyone knew it. Meghan's mouth opened, her face flashing from shock to fury in a single heartbeat. Bullying, she repeated, her voice sharp and bitter. You're going to sit here and bring up unsubstantiated allegations planted by the palace, no less, to discredit me? That was the moment Whoopi Goldberg, who had stayed quiet until now, leaned forward, her voice low but powerful. Hold up, Meghan. I've been listening this whole time. But you can't just dismiss every criticism as palace manipulation. At some point, you've got to take responsibility for your own actions. The betrayal was clear in Meghan's eyes. Of all the women at the table, Whoopi had been the one she might have expected to show some solidarity. Instead, her words landed like a blade between the ribs. Meghan's voice cracked, both furious and vulnerable. Responsibility? I took responsibility by walking away from a toxic environment. I took responsibility by protecting my family. What more do you want from me? The studio hummed with attention. The air was thick, suffocating. But Joy wasn't about to let her off the hook. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. We want honesty, Meghan. We want you to stop hiding behind buzzwords and PR talking points and just be real. Admit that maybe, just maybe, you made mistakes. Admit you weren't the perfect victim you've painted yourself to be. Meghan's breath came fast, her chest rising and falling. Her voice rose until it nearly cracked. Perfect victim? Do you think I wanted any of this? Do you think I wanted to be hounded by the press every day? Do you think I wanted my own father to sell me out to tabloids? Do you think I wanted to be driven to the point where I didn't want to live anymore? The rawness in her voice silenced even the loudest hecklers in the crowd. For a brief moment, everyone could see the pain underneath the polish. But Joy wouldn't let go. I think you made choices, she said coldly. And now you want sympathy without accountability. You want to be seen as a victim without acknowledging the consequences of your actions. Sarah Haynes, clearly rattled, tried desperately to cut in. Maybe we should take a step back here. This is getting very heated, and I think... No, Meghan's voice was sharp, almost venomous. She cut Sarah off mid-sentence, her finger pointing across the table. Don't you dare try to manage me right now. I came here in good faith to talk about children's literacy, and instead I've been ambushed by a panel of women who clearly decided who I was before I even walked through the door. Sunny leaned in again, her eyes narrowing. Ambushed? Meghan, you've been on every major platform telling your side of the story. This is the first time someone's actually challenged your narrative with real questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. And Meghan, her hands trembling, her jaw clenched, stared across the table at her accusers, her chest heaving with barely contained rage. You want to challenge my narrative? She said, her voice low, dangerous. Fine. Let's talk about narratives. Let's talk about how the show makes money tearing down successful women. Let's talk about how you all sit here every day pretending to be champions for justice while you make a living attacking people. Tell me how that's any different from the tabloids you claim to despise. The audience was on the edge of their seats now. Some were cheering, others booing. Every word was gasoline on the fire. Joy smirked, delighted at the eruption. Oh, here we go. Now we're finally seeing the real Meghan Markle, the one who can't handle criticism without turning on everyone else. The insult hit like a spark in dry grass. The atmosphere was about to combust. And that was when Meghan pointed directly at Joy Behar, her eyes blazing, her voice shaking with fury. You want to know what tearing people down looks like? She spat. It looks like a 78-year-old woman who's made millions by profiting off other people's pain. It looks like pretending to be a feminist icon while you rip apart every woman who threatens your relevance. The studio fell deathly silent. Joy's mouth dropped open. For the first time, she looked stunned, caught off guard. But only for a heartbeat. Her face hardened, her voice trembling with rage. "Excuse me," she snapped. "Did you just call me irrelevant?" Meghan didn't flinch. "I called you what you are." The studio audience went wild, some screaming, some booing, some leaping to their feet with cheers. It was chaos. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every expression, every glare. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't just an interview anymore. This was a war. And nobody was leaving unscathed. The studio was a cauldron about to boil over. The audience, once a buzzing sea of chatter, had become a storm of divided voices, cheers, boos, shouts, whistles. The cameras swung back and forth, catching every twitch, every narrowed eye, every flash of teeth. This wasn't television anymore. It was combat. Joy Behar still hadn't sat down. Her arms were crossed, her jaw tight, her body angled toward Meghan like a duelist ready to strike. Meghan, standing stiff, her chest heaving with fury, wasn't backing down either. The air between them was thick enough to choke on. "Say that again." Joy snapped, her voice carrying over the din. "I want you to look me in the eye and say it again." Meghan's glare didn't waver. "I said you've made a career out of tearing women down. You sit there every day, pretending to empower, pretending to uplift, but what you really do is profit off division. You're no better than the tabloids you claim to despise." The crowd erupted. Some roared in support, others shouted back at Meghan, hurling words too loud and messy for the microphones to fully catch. The control room panicked, cutting between close-ups, wide shots, reaction shots. This was television gold, but it was also teetering on the edge of disaster. Joy stepped closer, her voice sharp, her tone cutting through the noise. "You think you're better than everyone else, Meghan. That's your problem. You came in here expecting to be praised, worshipped, adored. But the moment someone challenges you, suddenly, you're the victim again. Poor Meghan, misunderstood Meghan, bullied Meghan. You've got one story, and you've milked it dry." Meghan's face flushed, her voice trembling but louder than ever. "You have no idea what it's like to live my life. To have cameras shoved in your face every day. To be vilified by the press, abandoned by your own family, attacked just for existing. You don't know what it's like to wake up every morning to lies about you in every headline. Don't you dare trivialize that pain." And then Whoopi Goldberg finally rose. Her chair scraped loudly across the floor as she stood, her presence commanding instant silence. Her voice, gravelly yet powerful, carried weight like a gavel. "Enough." The word froze the panel mid-motion. Even the audience seemed to hush, their cheers and boos tapering into tense anticipation. Whoopi walked slowly to the center of the table, her eyes locking first on Meghan, then on Joy. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice was the calm at the center of the hurricane. "This show," she began, "is about discussion, about debate, about hearing different perspectives. But what I see right now, this isn't discussion. This isn't debate. This is personal. And it's ugly." Meghan turned, her voice raw. "How can it not be personal, Whoopi? They've been attacking me since I walked out here. I came here to talk about my work, my foundation, my book. Instead, I'm on trial, like some kind of criminal." Whoopi's gaze didn't waver. "And what did you expect, Meghan? You knew you'd be asked about the controversies. You knew you'd be challenged. That's the price of the platform you've built for yourself. You can't come here, on national television, and expect a free pass." Joy smirked, almost triumphantly, but Whoopi turned to her next. "And you need to stop making this about your pride. We're here to ask questions, not settle scores. If you can't handle that, then maybe you're the one who shouldn't be sitting at this table." The audience gasped. Joy's eyes widened, caught off guard by Whoopi's rebuke. For a moment, Meghan looked as though she'd found an ally. But Whoopi wasn't done. She turned back, pinning Meghan with the full weight of her glare. "And you, Meghan, you want empathy? You want understanding? Then stop talking at everyone and start listening. You keep saying nobody understands your pain, but you've never once acknowledged the people who've been hurt along the way. Your staff, your family, even people in this room. You demand compassion, but you don't give any in return. The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan's face trembled, her lips parting as if to respond, but no words came out. Her eyes darted from Whoopi to Joy to Sunny, searching for an escape. Then Joy pounced, her voice sharp and mocking. See? Even Whoopi sees it. You can't handle the truth. You've built this whole brand around being a victim, but the moment someone pushes back, you collapse. Meghan spun on her, her voice exploding into the microphone. I will not be called a liar on live television. I will not be painted as some manipulative monster just because you all can't stand that I refuse to play the palace's game. I fought for my family, I fought for my children, and I will not apologize for surviving. The crowd went wild again, screaming, shouting, stomping. The cameras zoomed in as Meghan's hands shook, gripping the edge of the table like she might tear it from the floor. Sunny leaned in, her voice icy calm, almost surgical. Nobody is saying you didn't struggle, Meghan. But surviving doesn't make you untouchable. Surviving doesn't excuse hurting others. And right now, what we're seeing, it's not grace. It's not strength. It's defensiveness. The words sliced like knives. Meghan recoiled, as if slapped. Her breathing quickened, her chest heaving. For a moment, she looked less like a duchess, less like a celebrity, and more like a cornered animal, ready to lash out or flee. Then she made her choice. She pushed back her chair with a screech of metal on floor, the sound echoing through the studio. The audience gasped. She stood tall, her jaw set, her fists clenched. That's it, she said, her voice trembling with fury. I don't have to take this. Not from you. Not from anyone. This is nothing but an ambush, and I refuse to be a punching bag for ratings. Joy sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, there it is. The royal walk-off. How predictable. Meghan's eyes blazed. Better to walk away with dignity than sit here and rot in hypocrisy. The audience erupted, some cheering wildly, others booing loudly. The control room frantically cut between cameras, catching every angle. Meghan standing, Joy glaring, Sunny shaking her head, Sarah wide-eyed, Whoopi watching with arms crossed like a judge waiting for the verdict. Meghan turned, her back to the table now, her hair swinging as she strode toward the edge of the stage. Each step was heavy, echoing in the silence between audience roars. The panel sat frozen, the tension stretched so tight it felt like the whole set might snap in two. But just before Meghan reached the edge of the stage, just before she could disappear behind the curtain, Whoopi's voice rang out again. Meghan, you walk off that stage and you prove every critic right. The words landed like a thunderclap. Meghan froze, her back still to the panel, her body stiff. The audience hushed, waiting, holding its collective breath. Would she leave? Would she turn back? The cameras zoomed in, hungry for the decision. And in that stillness, with the entire world watching, Meghan's shoulders rose and fell, her breath ragged, her fists trembling at her sides. The stage had become a crossroads. And whichever way she chose, the fallout would be seismic. The studio air was heavy, thick enough to choke on. Meghan stood frozen near the edge of the stage, her back to the panel, the spotlight framing her like a figure in a painting. Whoopi's words still echoed. You walk off that stage, and you prove every critic right. The audience held its collective breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of cameras and the faint rustle of people leaning forward in their seats. The whole world seemed to balance on the question of what Meghan Markle would do next. Her fists unclenched slowly, her fingers trembling as they opened. She turned, slowly, deliberately, to face the table again. Her eyes glistened, her face flushed, her lips pressed into a tight line. The panel leaned in, waiting. She walked back, each step measured, her heels clacking against the floor. When she reached the table, she didn't sit. She remained standing, towering over them, her voice quivering with restrained fury. You want me to stay? Fine. But you're going to hear me now. All of you. The crowd erupted, cheers, boos, applause, whistles. Meghan raised her hand, commanding silence. The audience fell quiet again, eager to hear what would come next. I've been lied about, smeared, called every name you can imagine, she began, her voice rising in strength. And yes, I have spoken out. Because silence, in the face of cruelty, is complicity. And if that makes me a victim in your eyes, so be it. But I will never apologize for surviving, for fighting, for refusing to be broken. Sunny leaned forward, ready to counter, but Meghan cut her off with a glare. Don't. Not this time. You've had your questions. Now it's my turn. Because, let's be real, what you're doing here today isn't journalism. It's theater. You bring me out here under the guise of a conversation, then ambush me with accusations and half-truths. That's not honesty. That's exploitation. The audience roared, half cheering, half booing. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between Meghan and the others, while Joy's lips curled into a smile that looked more like a baring of teeth. Oh, please, Joy said, rolling her eyes. Don't act like you didn't know exactly what you were walking into. You live for this kind of drama. It keeps you in the headlines. Meghan's face hardened. Drama? You think suicidal thoughts are drama? You think estrangement from your family is drama? You sit here in your chair, safe and secure, and you mock pain because it's not yours. But let me tell you something, Joy, you wouldn't last a week in my life. The crowd gasped. Joy's jaw tightened, but before she could fire back, Whoopi intervened again, her voice booming over the chaos. Enough, both of you. She slammed her hand on the table, rattling the mugs and notes scattered across it. This isn't a boxing match. This is supposed to be a conversation. But right now, it's nothing but noise. The silence that followed was tense, jagged. Everyone waited for the next move. Meghan's breathing slowed, her shoulders easing slightly. She looked at Whoopi, her expression softening for the first time. You're right, she admitted, her voice lower now, almost weary. It is noise. And maybe that's the problem. Too much noise. Not enough listening. The vulnerability in her tone caught even her critics off guard. The audience, still buzzing, hushed again. Meghan continued, her words quieter, steadier. I came here to talk about my work with children. About literacy, empowerment, hope. And somehow it turned into this circus. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I should have known better. But let me be clear, I am not the villain you want me to be. And I'm not the saint some people think I am either. I'm just a person. Flawed, complicated, human. And I refuse to be defined by anyone else's narrative. For the first time, the room softened. Some members of the audience nodded. A few even wiped their eyes. The panel shifted uneasily, the sharp edges dulled, if only for a moment. But Joy wasn't done. She leaned in, her voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. That's a nice speech, Meghan. Really. But the truth is, you've built your entire brand on your pain. And no matter how eloquently you spin it, the fact remains, you've cashed in on your struggles. And the world sees it. The tension snapped again. Gasps rippled through the audience. Meghan's face paled, then flushed with fire. You think I wanted to cash in on pain? She shot back. You think I chose to be torn apart, day after day, until speaking out was the only way to survive? You don't get it, Joy. You never will. Because you've built your success by tearing others down. I built mine by standing back up when the world tried to break me. The room shook with applause, louder than before, though still divided. Some booed, but Meghan's supporters in the audience shouted louder, their voices rising in her defense. Whoopi, arms crossed, finally sighed. All right, I think we've said what needs to be said. This is a lot, and it's messy, but maybe that's the truth of it. Maybe there are no neat answers here. The panel sat in tense silence. Joy looked like she wanted to retort, but Whoopi's glare stopped her cold. Sunny's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Sarah kept her eyes down, fiddling nervously with her notes. Meghan inhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling. Then she reached for the microphone, pulling it closer. Her voice softened, almost breaking. "For everyone watching," she said, her eyes scanning the cameras, "remember this. No matter how loud the voices against you, no matter how relentless the criticism, your story matters. Your truth matters. And you are allowed to stand in it, unapologetically." The crowd roared, this time with more cheers than boos. The sound filled the studio, drowning out the tension at the table. Meghan stepped back, her eyes still blazing, her chin high. She looked at the panel one last time. Joy's glare, Sunny's frown, Sarah's uneasy half-smile, Whoopi's stoic expression, then turned to leave. But this time, it wasn't an escape. It was a declaration. She walked off stage with her head held high, the audience on its feet, clapping, shouting, chanting. The cameras followed her until she disappeared behind the curtain. The image froze in the minds of millions watching. Meghan Markle, walking away from the chaos, owning the final word. Back at the table, the panel sat stunned. Joy muttered under her breath. Sunny shook her head. Sarah sighed in relief. Whoopi simply leaned back, her voice calm, resigned. "Well," she said, almost to herself, "that'll be one for the history books." The credits rolled. The screen faded to black. But the echoes of that clash would ripple far beyond the studio walls. Online, on headlines, in living rooms around the world, people would be talking, arguing, dissecting. And Meghan? She had walked away, not broken, not silenced, but louder than ever.